Welcome to Monsters Conquer the World. I'm Matt. As always, I'm joined by Ralph.
Hello.
And this is a podcast where Ralph and I yak about monster stuff, especially kaiju flicks. I'm a lifelong dyed-in-the-wool super fan, while Ralph brings a fresh, incisive perspective to the creature feature chaos. We've got a special guest with us this time, Zach Bergman.
Yes, again, very much more informed person than me. And
me, because he's
in certain ways.
Yeah.
In certain ways. He's very he's sort of like my go-to anime scholar.
Yeah.
Like all things anime, like every time I talk to him, I get like 10 great recommendations that I know I should watch that I don't have time to watch. So I'll like pick one sort of thing and just try to make my way through it. But he just devours the stuff, and he's very knowledgeable about Hideaki Anno, and I hope I said it right. But
I think you did, because my terrible Michigan voice always wants to call him Anno. But I think it is Anno.
Yeah, but he's a lot of connections to Ava in this, and a lot of anime talk. So if you're not, I mean, I would hope you'd be like interested anyway, because I think anime for me became an important medium, in a more important medium in my life, because I think it's just visually astonishing, and the stories are, you can do things in anime that you can't do anywhere else.
Well, and I think one thing I try to keep in mind about anime is that it's a medium, not a genre.
Right.
And so if you think about anime and you think, well, I don't like Pokemon or Dragon Ball Z, it's like, well, you're in luck, because there's sports anime, there's slice of life anime, there's romance anime. Like there's really like, It's such a, it reminds me of something like comic books, which I've just started to dip a toe into. It's such a broad universe of stories that it's kind of overwhelming, but like there's like a 99% chance there's something in there you're going to like.
Well, yeah, you just pick a point and start. Like,
find something that looks good and
whatever.
Go nuts.
Yeah, because there's really no right way to do it.
Yeah. And
it's like asking someone like, what's a good comedy? Like
yes.
what's a good live action movie?
Right, exactly.
Like,
what's a good sculpture?
Yeah. So
and I think anime is super important to talk about, because this time we are talking about 2016's Shin Godzilla.
Yes.
Which has deep roots in anime.
Right. And he's here for that, and in the history of Anno and his work and how it ties into Shin, because it's all over Shin.
Yes.
But Matt unfortunately could not make it to the interview portion.
Right.
So I wanted to grab Matt's thoughts up front and in the back as well.
Oh, yeah. Back to front, baby.
All right. But yeah, a little bit at the beginning episode and a little bit at the end, and interview in between.
Love it.
Might be a long one.
Yeah. Yeah. Zach knows this shit.
Yeah.
He's got a lot to say.
When he starts talking, he goes.
Hell yeah.
And a lot of stuff connecting to a lot of other stuff. So
that's called content, baby.
Yep, I was just trying to keep up with him. But
I heard a little bit, and yeah, I'm in the same boat. I'm like, oh boy.
The one thing that was really missing from the interview, Matt, though, is definitely just your thoughts and impressions of like things like effects and the movie itself, divorced from the whole Anno thing. Yeah,
because Anno's body of work, like this, Shin Godzilla is by far the thing I know the most. Like I know that he created Neon Genesis Evangelion, and I know that's like a hugely influential piece of not just anime but also giant monster fiction. So like it's this big blind spot for me that I've been meaning to correct since it's on Netflix now, and it's one of those big commitments that I haven't committed to yet, you know?
It's not that big when you really think.
No.
There's 26 episodes and they're about 23 minutes a piece.
Okay.
So it's
like, I could knock this out in like a weekend. Oops.
Yeah, you probably but I mean, I'm only 2 episodes in, but I think it's riveting, personally.
I will say this, it's fucking beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
A while back, I don't know how I ended up here, but I randomly watched a battle sequence, I think from towards the end of the show.
Yeah.
Astonishing.
Yeah.
It's fucking wild looking. In a good way, in like a very good way. The Ava designs are so alien and so unlike anything else I've seen in giant monster movies. It's very like engrossing.
It's got like an insect sort of aspect to it.
I always think of, did you ever see Aeon Flux? Not the live action movie, but the weird
I don't think so.
Animated. There was this. So I watched a lot of mid 90s MTV because we had just gotten cable, and there were these strange animated shows. I think probably because Beavis and Butthead was a big hit.
Mm-hmm.
There was this anthology show called Liquid Television, and one of the segments on that was Aeon Flux, which I'll show you it later.
All
it's
right.
horrifying looking. It's this oversexed, like futuristic spy thriller, but it's oversexed in a way that is not sexy. It's like gross.
Oh,
and it's fascinating.
I would check that out.
And again, I think if you see it, you'll see what I'm talking about. How the humans look like Avas in that. It's terrifying.
We should. Well, and Zach gave us a suggestion as well for a big monster anime that he thought he might like to come back for. So,
hell yeah!
Well, when you finally hear the interview,
we'll circle back to that.
Yes.
I love that idea.
Yes. So, in the meantime, though, we should just grab your thoughts.
Yeah, well, before we dip into that, before we wobble down the street and shoot blood out of our necks, let's give a quick thanks to our strong and wise patrons. You are the wind beneath our wings. So yeah, it's probably not a surprise to anyone listening to this that Shin Godzilla was a big deal. It was a big fucking hit with critics and audiences. It's a divisive movie, I would say, especially among hardcore Godzilla fans, but
yeah, even from the little bit that I've seen, it's very different.
Yes. Yeah, right. Yeah. Compare Shin Godzilla to something like Godzilla vs. Gigan.
Right.
A little different.
Yeah, in the interview, I like mess up the name of all the Godzilla movies that we've seen. It's just like real amateurish stuff. But yeah,
well, it doesn't help that each movie has like 4 different names.
Right, and it's Godzilla versus this guy that I don't understand the name of, and but that's really not a huge deal in the grand scheme. But this one scares me.
Yeah,
some of the other Godzilla movies don't scare me.
Plenty of the other Godzilla movies aren't particularly scary, but it was a blast rewatching this the other night because it's just like sitting there watching it. It's scary, it's intense, but like you're still pulled into the human drama, and it's just I love all of the Godzilla movies, right? Like they're all my children. I love them all very dearly, but this is in a pretty exclusive category where it goes beyond being a Godzilla movie and is a capital F film.
Yeah.
And off the top of my dome, the only other Godzilla movie I'd put in that category is the original, the 54 original. And I don't think I'm alone in thinking this movie is like red hot shit because the Japanese Academy Awards, it like swept. It took Picture of the Year, Director of the Year, Best Cinematography, Best Art Direction, and a bunch of technical awards.
Yeah, it looks amazing. It sounds amazing. Everything about it. I personally don't understand the person that's so into Godzilla they can't set aside something and just enjoy the film, but also like, I mean, I'm an outsider, so
right. So you kind of have that.
I haven't been watching these for 30 years.
You don't have that baggage.
Yeah, exactly.
As someone who does have that baggage, the ad campaign for this movie was nuts because they exclusively showed the final stage, the big charred black upright Godzilla, and he's fucking crazy looking and scary looking, and his silhouette is essentially the same as previous Godzillas, but it's that texture, man, and the face is totally different and scary. And I just remember seeing the trailers for this and thinking, oh shit, like they're going full horror with this one. This is a horror movie.
Yeah.
And it's funny because that was the same reaction I had to the 2014 trailers, because the 2014 trailers were very bleak too.
Yeah.
And in both cases, no, it's not like a full-on horror movie.
It's not, but it is scary.
Hell yeah. Oh, no, definitely. But it's also it's weird. When I think back on Shin Godzilla, and my brain remembers it as like a more bleak and dire movie, and I think I'm blending it together with the 54 Godzilla, because that one is bleak as shit.
Yeah.
And in comparison, Shin Godzilla is pretty upbeat.
There's a lot of humor.
There's a lot of like wonderful dry humor.
Brisk pace a lot of the time.
It's snappy.
Yeah, snappy.
And it's all these fast talking politicians,
right,
putting aside their bullshit and working together, and that's like a really cool thing to see.
We go quite a bit into like how much bullshit is involved too, though. With this one, particularly like bureaucracy comes up a lot in the interview we're doing, because that's a main theme. It's
interesting because the movie was sort of created in response to the 3/11 disaster.
Yep.
And Japan's mishandling of it because of the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
So it's and it's when you think of that, it's like, well, then an American audience couldn't really relate to this at all. And I don't think that's true, because we had Hurricane Katrina. I remember how that went.
Yeah, every country has disasters.
I think it's more relatable than you might think at first.
I think for Japan particularly, it ending up in more nuclear fallout is just sort of like what really makes it relevant to Godzilla.
Oh yeah.
Like and also just like, man, again,
right?
You know, that sort of thing.
They even there's a couple lines like that even in the movie where they're like, "Fuck, why is it coming back to Tokyo?
This shit again."
No, they're all it's so great. It's such a cool movie because it really feels like somebody sat down and said, "Okay, what would it actually look like if a Godzilla showed up?"
Yeah.
And some of the movies have come close to that. Again, 54 plays it pretty straight.
Yeah.
But the fact that this one spends so much time in conference rooms and board meetings and meeting rooms feels very real.
Yeah, some other Godzilla movies
little more fantastical.
There might be more gallivanting amongst the humans.
Yes.
And they've sort of, well, I guess partially because they've accepted the existence of the monsters,
right,
by most of those movies.
Yeah, this takes place in a world where this is the only encounter.
Right, they had not seen this thing before. So ever. I think I don't know, there's just a lot of good to be said about this. In my opinion, not really any bad.
It's such a different movie, and they just fucking nailed it. Speaking of having never seen the creature before, as a lifelong Godzilla fan, you can probably imagine I was pretty fucking shocked by the first form of the creature. What did you think of that thing, Ralph?
It's shooting blood everywhere. That's,
it's got
just spurts.
Yep. Out of its neck for no clear reason.
Just like breathing.
Yeah.
And like, I understand it's a cooling thing,
We find that out later, but in the moment, we don't know why it's so alien.
I kind of assumed it was a cooling thing.
Oh,
because,
check out the big brain on
No,
Ralph.
because we've already established in other movies that Godzilla's like a reactor sort of,
right.
So I kind of just assumed like, he's a reactor in this too.
That tracks. No, that all makes sense.
Plus, somehow
it's still weird though.
Yeah,
it's so fucking weird.
I don't know how I sort of gleaned within the first 15 minutes or whatever this movie that like, okay, this is everything in this is going to be perfectly practical. Like everything's going to have an explanation.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, nothing happens or is a certain way for no reason. It's a tight script. Like it all locks together nicely. Yeah. I think if there's anything that kind of loses me or I'm just like shrugging my shoulders at. It is towards the end when they've got Goromaki's notes, and they're just kind of like, "Oh, fold it. You got to fold it."
Oh,
And they it's this big like molecular diagram or whatever, and they're like, "Oh yeah, fold it up." And I'm like, "Okay, I guess just fold it up." Like that
yeah.
if there's any part of the movie where I'm like, what you talking about, guys?
Yeah.
That part kind of loses me, and that might be something that just culturally doesn't translate or something.
Yeah.
But it's just like, all right, I guess reminded me of Contact. Remember Contact when the aliens send the blueprints, and it turns out they're 3-dimensional blueprints, and they gotta put them into a cube.
I mean, if anyone's gonna figure it out, it is the as Zach called it, the Autism Squad.
Oh boy. Yikes.
That's like a term that goes around on the internet.
Oh.
It's not like he made it up.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, the
Well, yeah, sure, no.
the ragtag group of
lone wolves
socially
and nerds
awkward
and
folks.
and yeah.
Yeah.
It's a fun crew. I like that this. What saves the day in this movie is a bunch of dorks working together.
Yep.
That's pretty magical to me. Yeah, man. What'd you think of the look of this movie?
Oh, I love the look.
That wobble monster, that rubber chicken, dead-eyed, rictus grin, blood-shooting fucking turkey creature. What'd you think of that thing?
Yeah, that's my favorite. God's.
It's so. Yeah. I have a toy of him somewhere. I fucking fell in love with that thing, and
It's so cool. Yeah.
It's amazing, and it's. Did it give you the creeps?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
It's the eyes and all of that.
The big dead eyes that I really get the impression that the eyes can't really see anything.
Right, because they're just looking wildly around.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's
like babies can't control where they look either.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
It's this thing, and it's familiar enough where I'm like, okay, that's sort of a Godzilla.
Yeah.
But it's so strange and so alien, and almost hits like that uncanny valley zone of like, is this a living thing? Like, what the fuck am I looking at?
One thing we have to get from you before we get in is, what did you think of the laser Godzilla? Are you a fan of laser Godzilla?
I'm in fucking love with laser Godzilla.
Okay.
It's
me too.
It's the wildest shit I've ever seen in my life. I could not believe it. That was another thing that they pointedly did not put in the trailer, and I'm so fucking happy about this, because I saw this in the theater. It had a limited run in like October of 2016, and I am so fucking psyched that I got to see it in the theater. That was such a good movie going experience, because so the wobble monster, the fucking rubber chicken thing,
sorry. So that wobble monster?
Yeah. He's got a fan nickname, and Zach might mention this too. Kamada-kun.
I don't know.
And so Kamada is the like district in Tokyo that it wobbles down, and kun is the Japanese honorific for like a boy or a young male employee.
Yeah.
And so he's Kamada-kun, and he inspired all this fun fan art and shit. One of my favorites was she was like a dental tech or somebody in Japan. So she had her face mask on and the scrubs, but she also had this big elaborate earring of Kamada-kun hugging her whole ear.
Weird.
It was dope. But yeah, so Kamada-kun being a secret and Laser Light Show being a secret. Yo, dude, I was not ready for that. I lost my shit.
It looks so beautiful too.
It's amazing. There was this great. It was a hoax, of course, but there was this article that came out shortly after the movie where Anno said in an interview that the reason why he picked purple for the light show is because he's a huge Prince fan.
Oh yeah.
And
maybe.
for a hot minute, I was like, that fucking rules. Who doesn't love Prince? And then I was a little bummed when it was revealed that it was a prank.
Oh, well, why did he choose it? He just he thought it would look best at that moment?
I think it's unexpected, and it's shocking, and it sets it apart from other Godzillas. It is, again, so yeah, when I was watching this again the other night, I got like fucking jazzed. I was like, oh, dude, he's gonna do it.
Yep.
It's interesting too because this one came out and I was sort of kind of able to kind of sort of able to track the development of the movie, and there was a period early on where Shinji Higuchi did the special effects for this, and he also did the special effects for the live action Attack on Titan movies, which are super cool looking. And those actually use a lot of practical stuff, like a lot of big marionettes they use for that, because the monsters in that are very human, but they have inhuman proportions. So you can't really do a man in a suit for those.
Right. They couldn't pull it off for this one for whatever reason, right?
That's right. They actually had a big puppet Godzilla made, and it looked badass, to be totally honest. And then at first it was like, well, we're going to do as much practical as possible. And then a little later they're like, well, we're going to do half practical, half CGI. And then right before the movie came out, they're like, we just did all CGI. We just said, never mind. And I was like, oh, okay. But it looks great. Like it worked. And I will always be cool with CGI when they do motion capture. Cause to me, that is the 20, that is the modern equivalent of suitmation, I think.
Motion capture, and they filmed buildings getting hit with something like, and it wasn't like they CGI'd the buildings bursting apart. That was natural, and also the motion itself was natural. So I think that's cool. And
it looks really, you can kind of tell because it looks great. Yeah. There's a lot of sequences where Godzilla kind of kicks at the ground, or Kamada-kun kind of wobbles at the ground, and just all this debris flies up, and it's beautiful. It's like little cars and bicycles and crates and things. And I know some practical stuff survived, and I think it was all things like that. Like when he flops up on top of the apartment building, and there's like the family inside scrambling to get out. God, it's a fucking good sequence.
It's
very upsetting.
Tough scene.
Yeah, right. And it's made tougher because the creature is so ridiculous and like comical, but the things he is causing are devastating. But him knocking that building over and all the furniture and shit sliding around, I think that's all practical too.
Oh, okay.
But it's miniatures. It's like Independence Day. Independence Day, they sold us as, oh, it's all CGI. It's all CGI. It's like, no, dog. I watched the special where they show them building the White House and filling it with tiny furniture.
Right.
Because when you do shit that way, it looks better than CGI.
Much, much better. And imagine trying to sell a movie now on like, oh, it's all CGI.
And it's like, yeah.
Like, no, we know that looks like garbage now.
Right. Well, and I think CGI has come a long way. I think it's gotten to a much better point than it was. And I think now we're better at matching practical, like putting practical and CGI together in a way that makes sense.
Right. Which to me isn't an improvement in CGI as much as it is like we realize the limitations of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's,
although it has improved
absolutely
on its own.
There's some pure CGI stuff that I think looks incredible. This is a very dated reference, but the prawns in District 9 are still kind of mind-blowing, I think.
Yeah, those actually are
and those guys are
I was impressed by those and I saw that maybe a year ago.
Yeah, it holds up. It holds up really good.
Yeah.
And maybe Zach might have touched on this too, but so Shin Godzilla is kind of a weird title for a movie. But Shin is actually a triple entendre in Japanese. It means new, true, and God. And so you can kind of put any of those in front of Godzilla for this movie and it makes sense.
Right.
New Godzilla, true Godzilla. I guess God Godzilla is a little redundant, but...
Well, not God Gojira.
Yeah. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
But I thought that was cool. And then this is a very strange Godzilla. Like, Godzilla himself is really weird in this, and I love that. But specifically, one thing I really dig is he has stages.
Yeah.
He has these very different phases where every time you see him, he's different. So you can't get too comfortable with him. And that's, to me, that is and this is something Guillermo del Toro talks about in his Pacific Rim commentary, and it applies to many older monster movies, but the audience wants to see the monster, right?
Yeah.
But if you show them too much of the monster, they'll either see that the special effects are funky, that it doesn't look that scary,
Yep.
or they'll get bored of it, or they'll get used to it.
Yep.
All fucking poison for your monster movie. You don't want any of those things to happen. So what Shin Godzilla does, of course, and we talked about Kamada-kun, his first stage is just a tail flopping around out of the ocean, and then he's this horrible rubber chicken monster, and then he turns into the real deal. But then the real deal even goes through changes: laser light show, tail laser, and then he's even in death. He has one last stage, the fucking creepiest stage, the humanoids in the tail, the stillborn peoplezillas. It's a fucking nightmare. And so I love this because it's very different for Godzilla, but it puts him in such good monster company. Mothra does it. Hedorah does it. Destroya does it. You go outside of the Toho stuff, fucking Dracula does it. The Xenomorph does it. And going back to giant monsters, Otachi and Pacific Rim does it. Some of the best monsters of all time. Of course, Godzilla deserves to be right alongside them. So yeah, fucking rules.
Yeah, it's a great movie. And yeah, I wanted to grab your thoughts now, and I'm glad that we did.
Yeah. Let's check in with Zach.
We'll get some more. Yeah, we'll get some more thoughts at the end, or at least we'll get some nice goodbyes.
Yeah.
End credits, if you will.
Ooh.
But
resolution.
Just before we get into the interview, Zach Bergman, as we have mentioned, wonderful amateur anime expert, if you can be all of those things.
Totally.
And makes wonderful music as Sour Gout. He's a little Renaissance man.
Hell yeah.
Snappy dresser. Good looking.
So, hell yeah. Now we're talking.
Yeah, hook me up. But yeah, here is the interview with Zachary Bergman.
This is political, and I think that's the key to Shin Godzilla, is that it's steeped in the idea of critiquing the Japanese government and their responses to disaster. That's kind of the entire purpose of the movie, which is made really clear in how so much of the movie is the city being absolutely fucking destroyed while people have to like stop their meeting so they can move the meeting down to the lower floor, you know?
Yeah, right.
Which was like, to me, simultaneously the funniest and the scariest moment in the film. When you really think about it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, yeah, it's real, right? Like, it's very real. It's how, and this is getting back to, it's how the Japanese government responded to Fukushima.
They just moved to a different spot.
Oh, there was so much bureaucracy tied up in it that more and more people, they could have avoided many, many hundreds of deaths if they weren't so wrapped up in the bureaucracy of how to deploy military or how to deploy aid. Because a key point in Japanese politics is Article 9, post-World War II. Article 9 was introduced by the American government that stopped Japan from being able to mobilize a military.
Right. To keep them, so like we use our military to protect them, supposedly, right?
Yeah. And
which is why it's such a big deal that North Korea right now getting nukes and our president being like, oh, well, it's no big deal. And it's like, no, it's a huge deal. Like, we have to protect them.
Yeah. And so Japan instigated the JSDF, the Japanese Self-Defense Force, which was meant to only be deployed in times of disaster and as a defense mechanism if people attacked them, but could never be used in an offensive way, with the exception of aiding in certain like political military action, which that's
American approved, basically.
Yeah. And that element of the JSDF is actually something that's covered really beautifully in the 1990 anime film by Mamoru Oshii, the guy who did Ghost in the Shell, called Patlabor 2, which is part of the Patlabor franchise. And that film is a great breakdown of this sort of false, corrupt peace that Japan lives in today. And it's really fascinating. It's one of my favorite films. But Anyway, getting back to Shin Godzilla, this is why the military presence in the movie is very interesting, because so much of the movie is like the military getting ready to shoot down the monster. And instead of your typical American scenario where the military just starts shooting at it and then they prove that it doesn't work, instead they're about to shoot at it and then it gets called off.
Okay.
Which was an interesting feature, because they saw the old lady walking. But like, right. In American action movies, no one would bat an eye. They would just shoot the fucking. And
yes, we've talked multiple times about the issues with the new Supermans because of exactly that. We just don't seem to care about life as much. Like,
no. But what was really interesting is also how that care ended up causing more destruction. So it's kind of like this weird middle ground, right? Like and what it all comes down to is that people aren't allowed to make decisions until they've had a meeting about it. Until they've covered all their bases and figured out every little detail about it. They're not allowed to make a decision, especially not one that involved military action.
That's sort of I get what, I don't know. That's sort of a like staving off fascism thing, though. It's a feature of the system. Mm-hmm. Rather than, it's that's the whole thing. Like I think they would prefer that almost. Yeah. I mean, not they, but what, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
the people who set up the government were like, this is a better idea than, like one guy being able to say what we all do at any time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what the film is critiquing is how that bureaucracy has gotten so complicated that in the case of Fukushima, they were unable to respond in time because they had to have meetings about it. And more people died. And that's kind of what the film is sort of almost less even just like critiquing, but almost making fun of. Like the movie is sort of poking fun at that kind of at the bureaucracy of the Japanese government.
Right. And it does a really good job, honestly. I mean, because there are no ifs, ands, or buts about like the meaning of like that movie. Like, but yeah, they make it very clear like what they're doing. I mean, I guess if you knew nothing about Fukushima, you might overlook a lot of it. I still think it'd be a good movie. Mm-hmm. But do they have any kind of a mechanism there? I can't remember if it was in the movie or not. Was there any kind of a mechanism where, like, in case of emergency, like one guy can call the shots? Because supposedly that's what we have with a president.
Yeah, and they had that. What was interesting is that technically they had that with the prime minister, but because of the way the system is run, the prime minister won't act on it.
I see. So he right. I remember.
Which is why there's so many scenes where people have to constantly demand that he makes a decision. And
right.
Yeah.
So you got like in that disaster, I remember watching it on TV and I had just had my son and I don't even remember, he was a baby, but I'm just like holding him because you wake up at all hours of the night and just watching a tsunami roll in,
Yeah.
And like watching all these cars just get picked up like toys and pushed away by a gigantic unimaginable wave of water. Mm-hmm. So that was my memory of Fukushima. And I just like, I don't know, you kind of know when you're watching that sort of thing that like you're watching something that is just going to affect people for decades. But the phases of that, I think I caught it. What the tsunami was the reason that the reactor began to melt down, right?
I think it was the earthquake, actually. It was the earthquake that triggered the tsunami. So the earthquake happened, then the meltdown happened, and then the tsunami happened, and it all kind of happened at once. Yeah.
So earthquake, meltdown, then tsunami. So that was really like sort of the last phase.
Mm-hmm.
That all makes sense. Well, it was just colossal. Like,
yeah, and there's no way you can't see how that the image of that tsunami isn't being mirrored in Shin Godzilla. Mainly the scene when Godzilla is in kind of its primal state, his early lizard state, like quadruped, where he comes out of the water and it's like this terrifying, wiggling horror crushing through the streets with water rushing everywhere from the canal. There's something in that shot that was very reminiscent of the news reports I saw of Fukushima. This idea of this giant body of destruction moving through a populated area and picking up cars like toys and doing the whole thing. And the fact that he comes out of the water, and there's all those elements to it. What was another interesting thing is how the nuclear element of Shin Godzilla is very different from the nuclear element of the original Godzilla, the 50s one, because in the 50s one, it's referencing the bomb. It's referencing Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And in the newer one, because it's all based on radioactive waste being thrown into the water and all this kind of stuff, it's more in reference to the ill-prepared structure of the nuclear reactor that melted down.
Right. And I was watching a lot of videos on these reactors, and they all, not all, but like some of them had different cooling systems than the other ones, even though they were all supposedly the same place and they should work the same. Like,
yep,
they just had completely different ways of cooling down. And this one, what was it? The reactor, it's normally in a reactor, you reveal the rods so that the water starts to boil and move around, and then that moves the turbine, right?
Yep.
And then these ones, they couldn't reseal the rods, right? They just remained open,
right? And
then started melting and getting into the water and all of that. Like pieces of uranium are like just melting off, and I think they said that it's still in the bottom of the reactor, like in the pool of water.
Exactly.
Like they'll never get it out,
and
it'll always be a problem.
And I think just thinking about how when the meltdown happened, no one knew the extent to which the radiation could spread from Fukushima. Uh-huh. And so in that period, people were terrified of losing Tokyo, right? Like that was the big fear.
Understandably, yeah.
And this little short video essay I just linked in the description, or linked in the chat, which I think we should link in the description too.
Yeah, I'll put it in the description
because it's really great. Talks about how both the movie Kimi no Na wa, Your Name, and Shin Godzilla both kind of deal with that fear of losing Tokyo, that fear of disasters from afar coming to Tokyo. And Tokyo is sort of like the center of Japan in a way, and like how, and you see it in Shin Godzilla because Godzilla shows up not in Tokyo, like that's not where he shows up, and it's about him slowly moving towards Tokyo. He shows up in it's in the same prefecture, but he shows up in like a smaller town, something more akin to Fukushima.
I see.
Yeah. And so that sort of intense fear, that fear of losing Tokyo. And I mean, an interesting quote in the film, actually, I don't know if you remember this, when the guy was like, oh, America doesn't care about, because when they're talking about dropping a nuke on Tokyo, and they're like, America doesn't care about far off Asia. And the guy points out, like, if this was New York, we would do the exact same thing. And what was interesting about that is when you think about it, Tokyo I highly doubt that they would, but also Tokyo to Japan is very much like New York to America, right? Like there's that kind of, that is not the place you want to lose. You do not want to lose Tokyo.
We do have, I would argue, several of those, though, you know?
Yes, that's the difference.
They might have one. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I don't think Kyoto or Osaka has the same kind of political importance or social importance as Tokyo, just based on pure population.
Right. Very, just tons of people. So, and like probably even more densely populated than New York, I would assume.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically like there isn't even a comparison in my mind. I mean, honestly, I don't know that they would do that to New York, but that's really neither.
No.
Maybe we'll find out.
It was a really interesting. It was a really interesting quote because it's so something an American would say, right?
It is like,
but it's we would do it to America as well. Yeah, but it's also like I fucking highly doubt that. You know, like
exactly.
Why would you even think that that's a good? You would. I don't think you would. Speaking of America, something that at first bothered me but eventually grew on me when I realized the joke. The absolute obnoxious overacting of the American Japanese chick.
Oh, it's so stuck out to me.
It's so funny.
She was not a native English speaker. I looked it up. Something about her, like as a little factoid, was like she didn't know that she was going to be a native English speaker either until very, very quickly, very soon before the movie was starting. They were like, "You have to learn English."
Yeah, and like, you can tell. And she does a surprisingly good job for that. But like,
right.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if Anno, just the way he is, did that on purpose. Like 100%. Was like, I want you to sound like an obnoxious American stereotype in Japanese context. I want you to sound it's so perfect in a way. Like, because at first I was like jarred by it. Like it took me aback a little bit, like kind of took me out of the film.
It took me a minute to realize that she was probably a Japanese person who just learned English, and then it made a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm used to that in watching anime or Japanese films, the classic English problem, as they call it, where Westerners watching Japanese media, and then someone starts speaking English, and they're supposed to be like an American, and it's just like, it just grinds on you so hard. It just like drills right into your fucking brain, like, Jesus Christ. And I mean, that's probably how a lot of people all around the world feel in like American films, where there's someone speaking a different language, right? Like, I think that's probably way more common than we give it credit for. I think
we never have to deal with it hardly, you know, and it really sticks out when it does happen.
Yeah, so like you think about like in Japan, like her English probably sounded like fucking fantastic. You know, like that sounds like English, whatever.
Oh yeah, it's Midwest accent. Yeah.
And the funniest thing is when she's speaking Japanese, she's like trying so hard to sound like a Westerner speaking Japanese. Like she's just really trying to like inflect in such a way that it doesn't sound like a native Japanese speaker.
It didn't stick out to me at all.
I definitely noticed that. Just hearing the language so much that like it's like there is inflections here. You are trying to sound like you're Japanese, but you're gaudy as fuck. You know, like you are. Right. You are American, you know, and she's really trying to push that like thing, and it's hilarious. Oh God, it's so funny.
I mean, it works though. I mean, this is such a tiny part of the movie, but like, you know, it's another thing it's a point that was well driven home, just like the rest of the movie. Like they're just everything is driven home the way it should be. Like when she makes a decision at one point to help Japan, and sort of, you know, she talks to the president and she says, well, forget you guys, you know, the US and the UN, like we're going to take this on ourselves, that sort of thing. I mean, that happens at the sort of the same time that she just decides like, no, I'm going to if you're in between two countries, and you're was she a Native American or American originally, or was she Japanese? I forget.
Japanese originally. Well, she says her
And
grandmother was born in Japan or something. I think.
And then educated
She might have been
in the U.S. and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
So
her father is an American politician. I think that was the key.
Right. So she's between these two places, kind of trying to decide in a way what she would rather be a part of. And she sort of personally decides I'd rather be a Japanese right now.
Yeah.
And that happens at the exact, she sort of makes her decision as well as the decision for everyone else.
Yeah, exactly.
Her personal struggle and the country's struggle.
Yeah.
But that also ties into you mentioned earlier the old lady, I think you said it was. It's been a while since I've seen it.
Oh yeah, where the old people where they wouldn't shoot down Godzilla in the attack helicopters.
Right. And it just, the whole thing being about sort of sacrifice.
Yeah.
And with Fukushima specifically, all of those workers staying there and trying to take care of the meltdown while being surely just taking in way too much radiation will absolutely destroy them. For the rest of their lives, they will have problems. And it's just I get that feeling for whatever reason, culturally or whatever, Japanese people understand sacrifice better than American.
Yep.
And we would, that guy, the military leader who says we would do this to New York.
Yeah.
Like you said, no, he wouldn't. That's not what anyone here would do.
No.
Because that's just not a part of our culture at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of resent that.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
I think an interesting thing going back to Fukushima, which sort of kind of relates to some of the bureaucracy in Shin Godzilla, is about how the reason why the meltdown was so severe was that they didn't have safety preparations in order in case there was a meltdown.
I heard that, yeah.
Because in Japan at the time, they believed that if you prepare people for disaster, it's bad for their psyche, and it can cause problems.
Mentally, or they mean in the mechanism of running a country?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I forgot exactly, but I think both. I think it causes problems for the whole system if you prepare people for disaster. Which is sort of ironic, thinking about the country that has been hit with probably more, for a first world country, they've been hit with more disasters than any other country I can think of.
In a way, that kind of makes some sense.
Yeah.
And I'll say it's because it makes sense that they, as a country, might be able to stay slightly more positive than an America would, because we are constantly thinking of disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And what might happen. And if you are, say, sort of conditioned to not think of those things, and then they just happen, as soon as a disaster happens, people tend to tend to act,
Yeah.
And whereas if you're thinking every day about it could happen, it's just going to drive you crazy. And when it comes, you're still going to do the same things as everybody else. You're just going to act. But it's I don't know. I kind of hate that in between point. That's just kind of what gives me anxiety in general, Yeah. What could happen?
And I always think about
I get it. I'm saying I get it. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I think I see the logic.
And if you think about the amount of socioeconomic terror and natural disasters that happened in Japan in the 90s, and how that led to the healing boom, and how that led to the yashike becoming a huge deal.
Can you expand on that?
The yashike is the idea of like healing stories or media that is built around the idea of healing.
Okay.
And that was a big thing after the bubble burst in the 90s, where they had that massive economic collapse. And there was also, I think the Hanshin earthquake happened at the time, or I don't know if it was the Hanshin earthquake. A big earthquake happened, and there's a lot of deaths. And then the sarin gas attacks happened. Which it kind of created this tension in Japan, this feeling of that the old way, that the idea of the constantly building up success has been just crushed, right? That the affluent day-to-day lifestyle is crushed. And what's interesting is that the healing boom sort of kind of decided to capitalize on romanticizing the everyday, romanticizing this, the endless everyday, and trying to bring it back to a zero state, to bring it back to just this affluence. And while also being aware of disaster in the good ones that cover that sort of stuff, particularly Yokohama Kadeshi Kiko, the manga that deals with climate catastrophe in a soothing, endless, everyday sense through the eyes of an immortal robot. And most of the manga is about her just driving around on a scooter and taking photos of like Yokohama completely underwater. And Yokohama's like, I highly recommend reading it. If you can get around to reading Yokohama Kadeshi Kiko, the whole kind of tone of the manga is very, very similar to Aria.
Okay, yeah, I like Aria quite a bit.
Yeah, so it's very much in the same vein of, and the Aria is in Iyashike for sure. That deals with a lot of these the ideas of the healing boom, which is still prevalent in a lot of anime, particularly. So I don't know where I'm going with this, but I think that there's something to be said for this sort of return to simplicity, return to safety, return to affluence, keep things cool, keep things chill. You know, don't think about the disasters because the disasters are too new. They're too recent, you know. And I don't know if this did lead to this, but it feels like those laws around not preparing for disaster kind of feels like it was birthed out of that. Out of just the intense cultural fear and trying to look away from the disasters that they'd experienced already.
Yeah, I suppose
this is very much conjecture. I am projecting. I am making opinions about another country in a way that is not, but I can't help but think that. I can't help but think about that when I think about them not preparing for nuclear meltdowns.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, we're going to be projecting. It's not our country. It's
exactly. It's so steeped in their politics that you can't ignore it. You can't. Yeah.
Right. And I can't, like, I don't know, if I want to talk about it, I can't talk about it as Japanese. I have to like try my best.
Yeah. And what's really funny is how, you know, if we were ignoring the politics behind it, we would have already gotten to the sick ass laser beam scene, but we haven't. We're not going to that yet because I don't want to talk about that yet because that scene is so good. But I don't.
When you talk about like the actual monster stuff and stuff blowing up, that's when you really want Matt here because Matt gets so excited about that stuff.
Exactly. I would actually really like to talk about a few key things, and I'm going to list them right now. And I don't have this written down anywhere, it's just off the top of my head. I want to talk about the like Pokemon-like phases of Godzilla. I want to talk about why that exists, and I want to talk about Anno's reasoning for doing it, and I want to talk about the company Toho, the film company. Their reason for being okay with doing that, because they originally didn't want him to do that. And I'll get into that. The other thing I really want to talk about is the fucking Autism Squad. I want to talk about the Autism Squad because that part is so fucking great. And that's about it, really.
Is that the unofficial name for them? Because I don't remember that being in the movie.
It's the unofficial name that an anime YouTuber said when he was talking about the movie. He was like, the Autism Squad. And I was like, yeah, that's real. It's so real.
Yeah, for real. That's great.
God. They're so great.
But, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, those are really the two parts of the film that stood out to me the most as the most interesting, that I can have the most to say about. But also, I want to talk about my hopes for a sequel, but we can get to that later.
You heard about Shin Ultraman, right?
Exactly, and I'm tying that in, and I want a crossover movie. I want Anno to do Shin Godzilla versus Ultraman.
Oh man,
I want that to be a thing. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but that would be so sick. Also, I do want to at the end of this talk about Shin Ultraman and why that's important.
Okay.
And when we get to that point, that's going to be me talking about Anno as a creator, especially. In an interview, Anno was being asked questions about various films he'd been working on, and particularly Shin Godzilla. And someone asked about the 3 stages of Godzilla. They were very curious about what the whole thing behind that was, and they loved it, but they were like, asked him about it. And his response was, well, I just thought it was a really cool idea to have him kind of move from this sort of embryo-like state and grow into the Godzilla we know. But Toho didn't want to go forward with that because to them it would ruin the image of Godzilla. That it would... that to make a Godzilla movie and have his first appearance be this weird lizard creature wasn't in the canon of what Godzilla should be. And Anno was meeting with them, and his response, which I just fucking love, which is exactly how most creatives around the world, but especially in Japan, get by with doing whatever the fuck they want. How do they do it? They play a little bit into capitalism. So what Anno said was, guys, no, look at me. You can sell 3 more toys.
That's so gross, and it worked.
It fucking worked. I mean, like, you think about it, like, Shinichiro Watanabe wouldn't have been able to make Cowboy Bebop unless Sunrise accepted the fact that they could sell toys.
True.
Evangelion existed because they could sell toys.
Yeah, because they're big robots.
Yeah. So they were like, you can do whatever you want as long as there's cool toys we can sell. Which is such an easy... God, I wish producers in the West were like that, in a way, you know?
Right.
Like, instead of being like controlling... instead of controlling everything, they're just like, well, you're really creative. You can do whatever you want as long as you can sell, as long as there's something in it that can sell. And creating a cool design, that's easy, but having to sacrifice the entire product for the sake of the producers, that's how you get David Lynch's Dune. You know,
yeah. Like he never did that again. Like, you know,
no, you get those
that was
problems.
The one where he's like, I'm never fucking doing this again.
Yeah, because the original idea for the film was great. Of course it was. It was David Lynch doing Dune. I just love the 3 phases though, and I want to hear your opinions on it, because my favorite, absolutely adore the way they use CG in this film.
It's perfect. And I had read when I was doing my research for this that they originally were going to try to use. I think they were going to try to use. I can't remember if it was a guy in a suit or like a puppet or something, but it was something real. And
they were going to try to do the tokusatsu thing. Yeah.
Right. And then it ended up that they couldn't do it. So they used motion capture to get sort of a realistic realistic motion, and and then they would like physically knock down like model buildings, which is it's like, okay, well, you've pretty much covered most of the bases with that. Like, you got an actual object being knocked down and real physics there, so you don't have to deal with that. You got somebody moving in a suit, so it looks like Godzilla moving. You just have to have CG. But like, I thought it was totally believable. As like, when I looked at it, I got scared, and that's my metric for all of these monster movies is, am I scared? That's basically the reason I have an issue with Suitmation, which is not really an issue, it's just different. I'm not scared of it, you know? I like the fear that I get from this CG monster that we're looking at with Shin Godzilla, and I love the initial version that you just don't expect.
And you don't understand. It's so terrifying.
Whatever this thing is coming out of the water, I have not seen it before, and it looks nothing like Godzilla, and it's got gills that are just gushing blood. That is the image that sticks out to me, possibly because it's the first thing, and possibly because it's probably the most horrifying out the gate.
I love the weird googly eyes. I love how it looks kind of like it gets into that zone of being kind of silly, and that's what makes it more terrifying.
Yeah, it's like a giant scary clown. Like, there's something goofy about it, and it freaks you out because it's got a knife or whatever.
Exactly.
But the form after that was a lot more Godzilla like. But did the initial version have 4 little appendages or no?
It kind of grew them like little. It was kind of a quadruped, but
yeah, that's what I thought. And it just kind of flopped around, but it wasn't. I don't know. It didn't have a lot of intent, and then it just slid off into the water again. And then the next time it was standing upright. Yes. Yeah,
but it was still not fully Godzilla yet.
And the in between, I am a little less clear on, because I only watched it one time, and it just kind of happened. And then the last version of Godzilla. How are you separating these? Do you have the sort of like statue Godzilla as another form?
Yeah, there's 3 real stages too.
That's what I thought. Because the third stage sticks out to me. Because
the second stage is just kind of an in-between. Like, it's just meant to be this sort of like gangly, kind of uncomfortable, bleeding version of Godzilla.
Yeah. That one, for some reason, didn't stick out to me as much as the first and the third.
Yeah, and the third is just fucking, yeah.
Well, there's so much just in there that I like. There might be a lot in the second form that I just missed, but it just seemed like the first version was absolutely horrifying.
Yeah,
meant to like be viscerally challenging to you, and the third is like just a work of art.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can see that there is depth. You can't see every single bit, but it makes you want to look harder.
I think one of the best parts of the film, and I think this is something that no American version of Godzilla gets right. No matter how good the aesthetics are, no matter how cool the action scenes are, what they never get right is shooting in daytime.
Okay. Yeah.
They almost always shoot Godzilla at night.
Yeah, I've heard that critique, and it's probably just easier to animate, I would assume.
Yeah, and Shin Godzilla doesn't give a fuck. They're like, it's going to be broad daylight, and we're going to have this like far away shot of Godzilla walking through the city. And there's something about that when it's done right that is way more terrifying, because you can just see it clearly as this real thing. You know, it doesn't feel obscured by film. because darkness obscures scary things. It turns them into something that feels like it's part of a film.
Well, you're half scared of the dark as well. You know,
it's like why the best zombie movies of all time are always the ones that captured it in the daytime, that captured the fear in broad daylight.
Right.
You know, like you think about like
it's twice as scary at night when that thing comes at you if it looks good in the day.
Yeah, you think about like the like shots in the original Dawn of the Dead or the original or like 28 Days Later or something like that, where there's this like this sense that it's just really happening, you know?
Yeah, and actually Walking Dead, the first episode was really good, and a lot of it was in the day.
Yep, and that's what made the comic really good too, which is why I was a big fan of the comics for Walking Dead when they were first coming out.
Yeah, I haven't seen enough of Walking Dead. We're gonna do a like modern zombie episode eventually, so I need to. But
if you want to bring me on, so I'd be into that.
Maybe.
I was big into zombie films for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, we have to have our zombie phase, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just we sort of fixated on it because it seems like around the time that me and Matt were in college, it started like coming back, like right after 9/11, and it's
totally
just has recently peaked and dropped off, you know.
Yeah, totally. And I think Walking Dead kind of killed it a little bit because what it did was it was adapting this really intense, really visceral, really political comic and watering it down. Really, the show really watered down a lot of the intensity. Because I remember talking to some fans of the show. And I remember asking them, I'm like, oh, so the prison arc. And I'm like, what do you mean it's okay? Don't you remember the scene when she gets revenge on her rapist with a spoon and a blowtorch? And they're like, they're like, no, that wasn't in the fucking show. And I'm like, what the fuck? They cut that out? That scene is seared into my mind. I cannot get it out of my head. Yeah. And the show kind of did a really bad job at keeping in a lot of the really potentially triggering stuff, if that makes sense. Like they kept in the intense gore and the brutality of it, but they left out a lot of the stuff that could cause more societal fear, more emotional fear, you know?
Well, I think I did not know about that, first of all, but I think also just my whole thing with Walking Dead now is it's sort of kept alive by the right wing sort of prepper type mindset.
Yep, totally.
So I feel like the whole zombie thing has sort of been hijacked in the era of the fearing of immigrants. You know, now that that's back full force. But we should probably get back to Shin.
Totally. But I just want to say one thing. It is funny that happened when you think about how Dawn of the Dead is a critique of consumerism. Okay.
Yep.
Back to Shin. I want to talk about the laser scene. I just want to meditate on that for a while.
It took me. I want to say it took me by surprise. That's like. I knew it was coming, but still, it was just like so amazing to see. I guess I didn't expect it to be that good.
No, like everyone always when they talk about Shin Godzilla, there's this slight critique from Godzilla purists that the movie made him silly by adding lasers, and those people are stupid. Those people are stupid. Because they didn't watch the fucking movie. They didn't see the scene where it was just so amazing how like the bomb gets dropped on him while he's blowing fire. It like completely just like debilitates him. He falls over. He's like kind of twitching. And the preparation scene where it like starts with smoke billowing out of his mouth. and then the smoke starts turning into fire, and then the fire slowly is like kind of spewing out sort of like vomit, and then it like starts condensing and getting closer and closer and closer together until it becomes a giant laser. That's with the music, the fucking music. Oh my God. That scene just like, fuck.
And then he has his cooldown period.
Yeah.
He's out. I don't know why people would think that's goofy because it's a disaster thing. Like it's terrifying to me.
Yeah. It's like, that is complete destruction. That's worse than fire. That's just like your entire city is going to be gone.
And it plays into the whole unstoppable thing that they have going here, where in other Godzilla movies that I've seen, he's more of a character, and we can't talk to him, but other monsters could talk to him. He could have sort of pseudo conversations. Sometimes there's speech bubbles. This one, there's nothing you can do. Early in the movie, like when I believe this might have actually been during his second form, they just say like, "There's nothing we can do. He just walks." Like,
yeah,
he just walks in a direction. Like, and then later, he fucking blows up.
Yeah.
Like, we try to do something to stop this thing, and we just make it worse.
Yeah. All it does is just add more fuel to the fire. It's like this guy, this creature that was just indiscriminately walking around breaking shit because it just wanted to move, is now angry. And now that's just another aspect. Good job, guys. You just made the lion pissed. Like,
right. But I love that period after where they're just waiting for him to start up again.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going, now what do we do?
Yeah.
Really? We have a little time. Let's figure this out. And well, I mean, I guess you run into more bureaucracy, and that's really where the quote unquote autism squad comes in, right?
Like, which are my favorite guys. I just love how he's just like, you are the top collection of what was it? It was like otaku weirdos, and like just generally people who piss people off. You guys are gonna like figure this out because you guys do not care about bureaucracy, and that was like really a big part of Anno's mission statement, I feel, because it's like, let's get together the otaku, let's get together the nerd, let's get together the autists, which Anno is a self-described autist otaku. Like, he is 100% like, he is those guys, and the movie is sort of saying in a way like, hey, fuck bureaucracy, we got to get to the heart of this, and we just got to get a group of nerds together to deal with it. People who don't care about whether or not they want to stop it. They don't want to just destroy it. They want to find the best way to stop it.
Yes. I mean, it's a weird movie because I love those kinds of people. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like I am one of those kinds of people where it's like, no, let's just get this done. Whatever the problem is, we have to take care of it.
Same, yeah.
But I do also, in a way, feel for everyone because I understand the whole bureaucratic thing. Like, if you're trying to be a leader and you've got all these other people trying to be leaders too, and you're all just sort of like handcuffed. Like, I don't know. I came out of the movie thinking like, wow, I really feel for everybody in this movie. Even if I don't like them. Like, I like that Anno was able to achieve that. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times in Godzilla movies, I don't feel anything for the people.
No.
In the new Godzilla movie, I hated all the people actively.
Yeah.
I said, everyone in this movie is making a stupid fucking decision.
Yep. That's the best part. No one makes stupid decisions in Shin Godzilla without a reason.
Right.
Like, if people are making a stupid decision, it's because they're stupid. They're not just making stupid decisions because and that's one of the biggest problems in most horror movies and most like action movies in the West nowadays is people make stupid decisions because stupid decisions develop the plot.
Right. And this one, the plot, it's so huge that no one can stop it. Everyone in the movie can make a good decision or an understandable one, and it's still gonna fucking happen.
I loved when the like interim prime minister gets put in after the prime minister dies, and how he's just like so unhappy to be in that position. Like how he's just like, and it's super like amplified by like there's this really intense meeting with him going on, and then they leave, and he like looks down and he's like, "Oh, my noodles got cold."
Right.
It was just like, oh no.
I was like, are they trying to say he's a wet noodle of a prime minister? And he turns out to be okay. But my first thought was like, oh, are they making a thing here?
Yeah. He's definitely like a nice guy. He's just like in a situation that doesn't fit him at all.
Oh God, yeah. It's those little human things too, like that probably would kind of upset you. Like,
oh God,
my noodles.
My noodles got soggy. Oh God.
But no one makes a bad decision though, in my opinion, unless I watch it again and I find like a couple people, but
no one makes like a dumb decision. No one makes a decision that doesn't make sense. Everyone makes a decision that makes sense, even if it's not a great one. Like,
right, you could always go back and go like, I see why you did that, and yeah.
Like everything the Americans do makes sense, and they're in their corner. You know, like everyone is just trying to deal the best they can.
Right. And it is a strange situation between the U.S. and Japan. I mean, at all times, just because of like if you're looking at it from their side, like we're literally trusting you guys to take care of us when things go really wrong.
Yeah.
That's a lot of trust.
Yeah. And
is that the point? Do the Americans drop the nuke on Godzilla, or do the Japanese?
The Japanese drop a bomb, just a regular bomb on Godzilla. The nuke is never dropped.
The nuke would destroy the whole thing anyway. I don't know why I say nuke.
Because it was the Japanese. America, or no, it wasn't Japanese. It was America that came in with better weapon, right? With fighter jets,
right?
And then
because
they all get completely destroyed by the laser tail.
Right. Wow. So, and then during this cooldown period, Autism Squad comes up with a actual workable plan.
Yeah, the freezing, the freezing of the blood.
And I had read that they used the same like devices that they used to fill up Godzilla's mouth in this were used in the Fukushima disaster.
Oh, I didn't know that. Shit.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It was like, not sure the science behind that or how they were actually used during the disaster, but that was just something that Anno threw in there to, again, just kind of tie it into like the real life situation.
Oh, that's very clear. Yeah. I loved that scene with all the trains. I remember, I think it was Digibro, it was some YouTuber who, it doesn't really matter who they are, but they were talking about this movie, and they commented on how the scene with the trains, where all the trains are like driving at him and attacking him, is the most Japanese thing ever. Because what it's like you have this thing that they're known for, their train system, and that's being used as a weapon. And there's just something so entertaining and fascinating and fun about that, you know, like there's like this, all these trains just like noodling up and exploding everywhere, and just it was so ridiculous and perfect. I loved it.
Well, yeah, it's going to be completely ineffective anyway, like that going in, and then
all it's doing is kind of making him kind of like stumble. That was the only point.
He doesn't really do much after that, I don't think, does he?
No, he kills like the first wave of workers that are going in to insert the chemical.
I do remember that. Yeah, one of them gets hit. I think the thing that sticks with people is just the last image of Godzilla. Like when I mentioned to one of my friends that we were going to do, actually he just brought it up on his own. He said, "Are you guys going to do Shin?" And then he sent me a photo of Godzilla's tail at the end of the movie
with all the skeletons coming out of it, all the like humanoid.
And he's like, he just was gushing about it.
Yeah. I've been saving that last shot. I've been saving it.
That's why I got confused about how many forms Godzilla has, because people consider the tail to possibly be the fourth evolution.
Yeah, the fourth evolution being him mimicking humans, which is absolutely terrifying when you think about it. Like,
yes,
because everything he does is in response to, right? Like every action Godzilla makes in the movie is just in response to what he's experiencing. And when he realizes that there's a chance that these creatures might have the ability to defeat him, well, what better way to become more powerful than to become them?
Yeah, I think that's from like if you buy it as a pure monster movie, I think that is definitely the way you would go. He's adapting to us. And I don't know, from another angle, I sort of saw it as like with the whole bureaucracy thing clouding the whole movie. It seemed like humans might have been the problem the whole time when you really get down to it. Like our responses. So I saw the possibly human skeletons in his tail as saying that sort of like
in a way, yeah. The real monster is us, the classic monster movie trope right
within
there.
You the whole time.
You can't not love it, right? Like,
right. Well,
the real monster was the friends we made along the way.
Well, like it's never changed since movies started. It has always been friggin' us ruining as many things as possible, right?
Yeah, exactly. And
us and nature.
Yeah, in that the monster, the terrifying thing is sometimes only made worse by our actions.
Right, or inaction. In this case, I think it would just be inaction.
Inaction, yeah. The lack of moving forward, the lack of being able to, make a decision.
But just the visuals, man. Like, I still have this image of Godzilla, obviously walking, but like there's power lines in front of him, and there's a bunch of dust being kicked up by him walking. And they just kept the dust in the foreground and the power lines and stuff. And it's pure daylight, like you said. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I'm like watching this, just like they did this so perfectly.
Yeah.
So like unthinkably well done. Visual. And I feel like maybe only an anime director could have really directed a live action movie this way.
I kind of agree with that. Like, a lot of people say that Shin Godzilla is the closest thing we'll ever get to a live action adaptation.
Right. And
that,
when I was watching it with Matt, I turned to him and I said, "This is the most anime live action movie I've ever seen." Yeah. It's just gorgeous. It
has that sense of scale. It has that sense of like aesthetic scale that like a movie like Akira has, or the movie End of Evangelion has, or something like that, where there's this sense of just uncontrollable power being presented that is really hard to present, or almost impossible to present live action. But Anno proved us wrong.
Right. You would think it was impossible.
Yeah, you'd think it'd be impossible to create the same intensity of Tetsuo transforming into the giant blob monster in Akira in live action. You know what I mean? Like, you think it would be impossible to do that, but the scene with the laser captures that same feeling. It captures that same absolute cosmic horror. That is one of the hardest things to pull off in live action film. It's one of the hardest things to pull off in film at all.
Right. That's the thing, honestly, that all Godzilla movies do struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they definitely achieved it with the first movie. People were terrified, and then I think sort of
for its time, it was definitely like achieved it for sure.
Yeah. Purely talking out of my ass now, but like it seems like as you go on and the Godzilla gets to become less of a villain, more of a character, funnier, that seems like an adaptation of like, well, we can't scare him anymore, you know?
Yeah.
To me that's what it seems like. I could be proven wrong by several movies that I haven't seen, but
generally speaking, they were more about being fun and badass and just like crazy cool, you know, in their own right. While Shin Godzilla is really bringing it back to the feeling of like, there's a meaning here. This means something. This is terrifying. This is crushing. This changes everything, you know?
Yeah. I love that feeling. I love being scared by something and actually being scared by it. It's just so rare.
Totally.
So yeah, this movie for me, it's my favorite that I have seen so far. But I mean, I'm not, like I said, a Godzilla guy. Matt, I don't know where this ranks for him, but I think he definitely recognizes that it's a different beast, but also loves it, you know? For me, it's just, as a movie, just one of the best.
Yeah, no, it's like a brilliant film. One thing I want to talk about, just as where my interests lie and where what I know about, since we're kind of nearing that point, is Anno himself and who he is and where he comes from, what his innovations are in the world of just art in general. And I highly encourage everyone to consume as much stuff that Anno has his fingerprints on as possible, especially if you like Shin Godzilla, because there is a consistency to his work that is very clear. And if you like Shin Godzilla, you will like Evangelion. You will like all of his work. So Hideaki Anno started out, he went to an arts college where he was studying to be an animator, and in the 70s. And so his influences were like Dazaki, World Masterpiece Theater stuff. So early Miyazaki, early Takahata, that kind of stuff.
Dazaki, what are they on?
Osamu Dazaki was one of the forefathers of like anime in the way we view it, like in the 70s. So he was the one that really brought like the idea of it was anime, unlike Tezuka, who did Astro Boy, where it was sort of proto. Dazaki was the one who did Ashita no Joe, the long-running boxing series that's supposedly like super intense and emotional and heavy. He did Rose of Versailles, the anime about like that's just a realistic depiction of the French Revolution. Like that was the kind of stuff that was going on at the time. But Anno was big into World Masterpiece Theater. He was big into Miyazaki's work at the time on work like just all the stuff, right? Like, and he was really big into Space Battleship Yamato and early Gundam and all that kind of stuff, the mech stuff, the stuff that was like bringing that to the forefront. At the time, most anime creators weren't fans of anime. They were people who got into it because they were into art. And Anno was one of the first anime creators who was into anime. He was one of the first people who was actually an otaku. He was one of the first people to be like, there's something here that's different from just the broader spectrum of what art is. And
for anybody who might not be familiar, define otaku.
Otaku it's just obsessive nerd. That's probably the best translation. But it ended up being applied to anime a lot late in the early 2000s in Japan.
Yeah. Okay. Just just for anyone who might not know.
Yeah, no, sweet. So the thing about Anno is that he wanted to start making animation. Like that was definitely an interest of his. But his main influence, and this is bringing to what he's about to work on soon, his number one influence, the thing that he was super into, and the first film, which was a live action film he ever made in school, was a parody of it, was Ultraman. So he created this weird tokusatsu parody where Hideaki Anno himself, as a young guy, is Ultraman with this like red, like he wears like the Ultraman thing like in his chest, like the red dot. But other than that, he's just Anno. Like he's not wearing the Ultraman costume, and he just becomes like a giant and fights this weird like cardboard monster. And it's hilarious. It's so stupid, but you can find it. It's on YouTube. And so I think it's great. I'm like unbelievably happy that he's doing Shin Ultraman, because Anno deserves that. He deserves to create the thing that inspired him the most.
I know from talking to Matt that one of the concerns that might come from him doing Shin Ultraman is that Ultraman is a sort of apparently, I've never watched any of it. I'm just going by what Matt said, but it's a very positive force. Where he's sort of it's almost to a silly degree.
Okay.
Positive.
I can combat that fear by giving more context to Anno's career.
Okay.
Because Shin Godzilla is close to Eva, but not really close to anything else he's done. So after doing this Ultraman parody, he did he started up Gainax, or almost started up Gainax Studio with his friends from the school, which was the first anime studio ever to be independent and to be made by people who were fans of anime. And out of their room, they did these short films for this convention called Daikon. That was the science fiction conventions were going on in Japan at the time. So he would do these opening films. And Daikon 3, the opening animation, is something that I think every single person who's into anything related to nerd culture needs to watch as soon as possible. It's on YouTube. Daikon 3. Yeah, Daicon. C-O-N. Yeah, because it's convention. Daikon.
Okay.
Daikon 3. Or Daikon 4. Daikon 4, sorry. That was a mistake. Okay. Daikon 4. And pretty much what you get is you get the amalgamation of everything Anno has ever done since, all crammed into this giant, epic work of copyright infringement. So what you get is this story about this girl in a bunny suit who's like running around fighting Darth Vader and fighting like all these different mechs from all his favorite anime, and they're all like running around, and she's like on this like fucking sword, and it's a sword from some old fantasy game, and there's like this crazy animation of like a whole entire city being completely destroyed by this explosion, and it's pretty much like shot by shot the same as the end of Evangelion. Like a lot of the shots in End of Eva are directly in reference to his own work on Daikon 4, which was also directed and produced by like all of his friends. So it wasn't just him, but they made it themselves as like 5 people in their room, and it's animation at a level that you don't even see done in a studio of 1,000 people. Like, it's insane. And the whole entire short film, that's like 5 minutes long, the soundtrack is Twilight by Electric Light Orchestra. So when I say copyright infringement, I literally mean it. That movie shouldn't exist. It's illegal. And that was Anno's... It's on YouTube, yeah. Someone uploaded it.
They've been pretty aggressive with their music takedowns lately, that's all.
Yeah, I think that the case for Daikon 4, just I don't think people care because it's just so niche.
Okay, yeah.
So after that, Gainax really started up. They got funding. Hideaki Anno got invited by Miyazaki to do animation for, and put a pin in this, to do animation for Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, or the scene where the giant warrior is shooting a laser from its mouth, destroying all the ohms, which is one of the most like visually stunning scenes in the entire film. That was animated by Hideaki Anno.
Okay.
When he was like in his, like, he was probably like 30, or no, he would have been like 28 or something. And after that, he worked on this movie called The Royal Space Force, which is terrible. Never watch it. It's bad. Anno didn't direct it. It's not good. It's just so stupid. So many tropes. I fucking hate. And there was a bunch of failure in the production of the second movie, and it never got made. And then he got given this kind of world masterpiece theater-esque show called Nadia, The Secret of Blue Water. But around the same time, or before then, he also made an OVA that I highly recommend called Gunbuster, which is this super emotional 6-episode OVA that like deals with similar themes that the movie Interstellar does, but in like an 80s anime OVA. So similar themes of like relativity and space and all that kind of stuff.
Relativity, Einstein's relativity, and space being space and time.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of a big subject to take on.
Yeah, so it's really great show, 6 episodes, really worth watching, and laid the groundwork for what became Evangelion. So with the exception of that OVA, with the exception of Gunbuster, there was a constant problem that plagued Gainax, where projects would be fucked with or have to like change in the later half. So Nadia, The Secret of Blue Water, supposedly, I haven't seen an amazing show until all of a sudden it is one of the worst shows ever made. Just near the end. Like, it just like switches gears, worse than Twin Peaks. Like, just goes fucking off the deep end. Down. It's just like shit show.
I have a soft spot for the bad Twin Peaks episodes, but go ahead.
Yeah. These ones are like embarrassing. Like, they actually like ruin characters. So with the failure of the sequel to the Royal Space Force, with the failure of Nadia, Anno was tremendously depressed. And he just recently had a breakup, and his life was just an absolute shambles. And then he got the opportunity to make Eva, which is literally a meditation on depression. The whole entire show is a meditation on how we communicate and depression. Like, that is really what the show's about. It's a very personal, philosophical show, especially as it goes about communication and psychology. That is the baseline of it, and especially the movie, where the whole theme of the movie is life is worth living even if you experience pain. Kind of hopeful, despite people taking it as a depressing film.
I think that's beautiful, and most movies that want to make that statement end up being depressing to most people, just because there's something sad in it. Like, as soon as they see something sad and they're like, "Oh, I don't like that," but they don't see that the end where someone might actually like come around and be like, "You know what? Let's just do this anyway. We can do this."
The thing about End of Evangelion is that it's like, my friend who watched it still considers it probably the most fucked up movie he's ever seen in his life, and he's seen Old Boy. Like,
I've got to see this movie then.
Yeah, it ends the show perfectly. It's incredible. You got to finish the show.
Yeah, having only seen a couple, I mean, I can tell that, like, it seems to me that the kid is sort of having trouble with doing the things that he's done just in the first 2 episodes, where he's like, okay, this is really hard and I'm not prepared for it, and you know, but I could see how it could flip to a depression thing because of his family situation, where maybe he's not been cared for as well as we would like.
Yeah. And after Evangelion, which, keep in mind, had to there's a common myth going around that the show Neon Genesis Evangelion ran out of budget in the later half, which is why the show started using more limited animation and became kind of weird near the end of the show itself, which is why the movie exists in the first place, to wrap things up in high quality.
So that rumor is pretty reliable.
It's not true.
Okay.
They didn't run out of budget. They ran out of time. They ran out of time because the sarin gas attacks happened, and they had to shaft an entire plot point.
No, you mentioned the sarin gas attacks earlier, and I don't know what those are.
In 1995, I think, there was a cult called the Aum Shinrikyo that
I've heard of them.
They committed a gas attack on a subway in Tokyo using sarin gas, and it killed a bunch of people. It was one of the most devastating that's ever happened there.
The same gas that they use in Syria now, where it fills your lungs with fluid.
Yeah.
You drown in your own lungs.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So that happened, and the show had a whole arc that was too close to that disaster, so they had to cancel it. So the show kind of went a different direction, and then Anno had an idea, and then they couldn't afford to do the idea because it was too big, so then they did this weird psychological thing, and then he made the movie. So that's what happened there. Because there's this common trope going around of this thing called a Gainax ending, which is a show that's really amazing and then runs out of steam and just kind of goes off the deep end near the end. The thing is,
rude.
Evangelion doesn't do that. Anyone who thinks the last episode of Gunbuster being in black and white is because they ran out of budget is an idiot. They animated that in black and white. You fucking idiots.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, they think it's a budget problem. They don't realize that they did it on purpose.
All right.
As an aesthetic.
No, I believe that. I mean, the internet's just filled with people who are just like, I don't get it.
Yeah. So
and I'm mad for some reason.
Yeah. Speaking of Gainax endings, after that, and this is where I'm getting to when you said positive stuff, that Ultraman is a super positive, uplifting thing. Do you know what the next show Hideaki Anno did was?
After Evangelion.
It's a show called Kareshi Kanojo no Jijo, or His and Her Circumstances. A slightly dramatic but overtly uplifting romantic comedy. And it is easily one of the greatest romantic comedies I've ever seen in my life, up there with When Harry Met Sally, if not better.
And it's sincerely done? It's like a...
Very sincere.
Yeah, okay.
He adapted this manga, and that show also had a ridiculous ending. Reasons behind that is that the manga author actually had a terrible idea of where she wanted to go, and it went down a road that was like really not okay and kind of creepy and disgusting. And it was really overly dramatic and awful. And guess who was the person who decided to make the story more light and more comedic?
Okay.
Anno. Anno was the one who was like, no, the best part of your work is the comedy. So we're going to focus on that. We're going to focus on the character development and the comedy and all that stuff and the aesthetics and everything else. And she got super pissed at him. She was like, I want you to cancel this show. You guys aren't doing it right. So Anno said, fuck you. Okay, I'm done working on this show. And he gave it to the then young Hiroyuki Imaishi, the director of who eventually went on to do Gurren Lagann and Kill La Kill. And Imaishi came in and did this weird episode where in the episode you have everything is done with real photographs and cut out pieces of paper characters just randomly light on fire, and it's just literally the paper being filmed lighting on fire. And there's a kaiju battle. So pretty much what happened before episode 19, it's called Kare Kano, or Kare Shikan. It's called His and Her Circumstances. His and Her Circumstances.
So the romantic comedy ends with a kaiju battle.
Well, episode 19 decides to do this crazy weird thing that was more symbolic. And then after that, Anno's understudy came in and just sort of directed the last few episodes in a kind of minimal, cheap way, just to kind of get it done. And then it ended kind of unfulfillingly. They're not bad episodes. None of them are bad. They're all great. It's just that the quality that the show had kept up until episode 18 was so high that it was kind of shocking. So finding out that it was actually just Anno being like, fuck you, you asshole. I'm going to do it. I'm not working on this anymore. Here, you guys deal with it.
Every time I talk to you, you bring up like 8 anime that all sound great, and I just never have time to watch them.
I mean, I still think you need to watch Sangatsu no Lion as possible, but that's just.
I think I watched one episode of that, and that's just like, again, just a matter of like time.
Yeah.
But that was really good. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I probably can guarantee I'll finish Evangelion. But other than that, I mean, it's kind of just random what I can watch. Like, anyway, Anno.
So after Kare Kano, he decided never to watch TV anime again. He made some weird short films. Other people started taking over at Gainax. So Imaishi, Tatsuya Sudamaki with Fooly Cooly, Imaishi with Gurren Lagann. And eventually he broke off to do the Evangelion rebuild films, which are not good. But the thing about them is that they were less about him creating something he wanted to create, but about bringing life back into the anime community by presenting these like training projects and building up this like epic visual marvel, if that makes sense. So the films are visually awesome. They're just like terrible movies because whoever writes them and directs them doesn't get Eva, but Anno doesn't really care.
Okay.
So other than making a bunch of weird short films about people fighting, like literally having like an epic like tokusatsu style battle, who gets to sit in the one seat left on the train, which is a great short film, by the way, and you have to watch it. People like fly and shit. It's great. And a couple other short films, like a Cutie Honey film and that kind of stuff. He kind of just got married and started focusing on instead being almost like a philanthropist. So he co-started this convention for young animators to come and present short films. And that's where we got things like Me, Me, Me. We got things like Sex and Violence with Mach Speed, and a bunch of these other weird short films that ended up going on to inspire bigger projects. And that was all run by Anno and Gainax. Or not Gainax, Kara, which was broke out of Gainax because Gainax ended up getting... It was all weird. That's all politics that I don't need to get into right now.
All sort of anime studios...
Bullshit. Just stuff goes
off weird. And yeah.
But Anno also created by the way, I'm trying to remember what it's called. Japan Animators Expo, I think is the name.
Okay.
Great collection of short films. They're not all perfect, but it's just really interesting. And Anno was responsible for a lot of it, for like producing it and making sure it happened. And he also started up the first museum of tokusatsu miniatures. So small buildings used in tokusatsu films. So he was like a huge fan of doing that kind of stuff. And he made a short...
He's all over the place, but it just seems like everything he does, he tries to make sure that it is the best package that he can make.
Yeah. And the most caring about product, right? And most caring about the actual creative endeavor and the people working on it.
Which is, I don't know, I really value that in artists, where Maybe they're out of their element at times, who knows? But they do their best and they make it all work together.
And Anno is like one of my favorite directors, and yet he's one of those directors who's famous for almost never creating a product that's actually perfect. But I think that's why I love him, is that he...
But there's a mania of his that kind of goes into it. Like, he's absolutely dedicated. It's just like, maybe it's imperfect, which is just what it is anyway, is what art is.
For the Tokusatsu miniatures thing, he worked with Studio Ghibli to create a short film using the miniatures and using people in suits to do a scene of the giant god warriors from Nazca of the Valley of Wind coming down and destroying Tokyo. And all of the ideas presented in that ended up being what he used for Shin Godzilla. So that's kind of what happened there. That's kind of the through line, in a sense.
It sounds kind of like a lot of his previous wins, like his good ideas, sort of just came back for Shin Godzilla.
Yep. To the point of where the soundtrack from Eva is used Shin Godzilla. It's like
right, where it's like it's almost like his greatest hits movie, but it's a Godzilla movie.
I know, that's totally what it is. Like, it's totally just expressing everything he's good at.
But it makes it a really good film, you know.
Yeah.
It's not any worse for it being a collection of his good stuff. I mean, like, even in the first couple episodes of Evangelion, like, there are shots that are reminiscent. The pacing is reminiscent.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do want to check out more of the guy's stuff because he's just good at it. And anybody who's that, I guess, fastidious about like what's just making sure that what they do is good.
Yeah.
And it seems like his distaste for bureaucracy and stuff like that, that's sort of an extension of like being an artist and trying to make art in a system like that where you have to answer to all of these other people. Like, that may be why artists really tend to hate politics and that sort of thinking anyway. Like, they don't want to answer to anybody when they know when something is right.
Yeah. And I definitely think that Shin Godzilla just represents so much hope for Anno, in my opinion, because with the rebuilds, it was really hard to tell if he'd lost it. Like, it was really hard to tell if, because the movies weren't good, it was kind of, there was this opinion that he wasn't good anymore, that he lost his... But finding out that his hand in those films wasn't as strong as you think. Yeah. And that, like, seeing Shin Godzilla proved that this guy has still got it, and in a way might be better than ever, was really nice to see. And knowing that he's done stuff like Karekano, a romantic comedy, I have a feeling that he'll be able to pull off Ultraman very well and very respectfully. I think that it'll be... He will play up the friendly silliness of the whole thing. Well, because that's what he loves about it. That's what he loves about it, right?
That would be a nice change of pace from, or at least just from Godzilla. But I'm looking forward to seeing it because I enjoyed this movie so much, and I know that Matt is probably looking forward to it. He just had maybe a concern or two. But I mean, I love this guy. I love this guy's stuff from what I've seen. So I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Same.
That's probably we should wrap up. Yeah. Did you want to plug anything of your own?
There's nothing really new that I feel desire to plug. I mean,
okay. That's humiliating.
Pay attention to my label, Collapse Structures. There's something on there soon.
Collapsestructures.bandcamp.
It's collapsestructures.com, actually.
Is it? Oh,
yeah, okay. I bought it.
All right, good for you.
Sour Gout is my name. I do music sometimes. Going to school for it, so I kind of can't release as much.
Yeah,
but yeah,
you're kind of a music scholar, so
yeah,
your music and anime knowledge are comparable.
Yeah, I'd say that, and I'd almost say my anime knowledge is deeper, which is really unfortunate because of what I'm studying. Like, it's like, why do I have to know so much about this? Why do I have to be able to bring off the top of my head some show called Neo Ranga and be able to name the right? Like, why is it that I have to be like, not only are we going to watch Neo Ranga, by the way, it's written by Sho Aikawa, and it's like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like,
yeah,
like, how do I know this shit?
I mean, that happens to all of us, though. I mean, I think my interests don't necessarily align with my life's course either, but I mean, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, you're a musician who runs a label, and you happen to be co-running a podcast about kaiju films, so, like, who cares?
Honestly, I love it. I love to have that kind of freedom where it's just like, yeah, let's just start a podcast, you know?
Yeah, no, it's a great idea. I've wanted to start them for a long time because I love the idea, and I have so much to say all the time. I remember there was a really great meme I saw where it was like, my little kid, Daddy, what is a podcast? And I just look at him and say, you know, sometimes when a bunch of men love their ideas very much. So that's pretty much what a podcast is a bunch of men loving their ideas very much. Yep. Anyway, I love podcasts.
Many women, but yeah.
I know. It was just fun. The general, like, obnoxious male-dominated podcast.
It is stereotypically exactly what we are as white males talking about nerdy shit. So
yeah, no, it's like let's deep dive into Japanese media. That's exactly what we are.
I think that's as good a place to end it as we're gonna find, because we'll go on forever. I'll bounce this back out to I guess me and Matt doing the closer, and then all right, lovely talking with you, Zach.
Yeah, it was great. I'm glad we were able to talk about that film finally, because I love it.
Well, we're gonna say the actual goodbye after I stop recording, but okay, everybody, back to us again.
Big thanks to Zach for dropping in and yakking with us about stuff. Always good to get another voice in there, and especially somebody who actually knows something about anime, because I know that's neither of us.
Yeah, and it's so important to this. It's so important to Shin. I mean, whatever you feel about your Godzilla movies, this one has a lot of anime influence. So
it is baked into the DNA.
You got to talk about it, and it's
absolutely.
I don't know. I'm in love with that stuff. Just as an outsider, just starting to understand it, I think it's great. It might just be exciting to me because it's new to me.
Yeah,
you know, and it's a whole world that's new to me. But Zach, you know, hit it out of the park. I had to cut him off, like he could, you know. But
that's what happens when you get an expert.
That's how when you got a person who knows what they're saying,
who knows it and loves it too. That's that powerful combo.
They got a lot to say about it. Yep. So, but yeah, did a great job.
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, Zach. I want to have him on again.
Hell yeah,
sometime. He suggested what was it, Neo Ranga? It's a giant monster anime.
Hell yeah, sign me up.
So yeah, he was talking about coming back on it. So we'll see, you know, what's happening down the line.
Yeah, I'd love to have more guests on in the future too. I think,
for sure.
I think there's a lot of exciting things we could do with that.
Yes, like we need to get creative with that. You know, like really
reach out and
start reaching out,
see who's out there. I'm bad at that, man.
But I got a lot of smart friends, so I don't know,
right?
You know, like what do we need them for? But I mean, the celebs.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Let's get some celebs on here.
What do we need them for?
Oh, why do we need?
Why
celebs?
do we need them when we got good friends who fucking know their shit?
Oh yeah, no. Oh no, yeah. I mean, just like I don't plan on getting celebs. Just cool people who know stuff.
Matt.
I know you do. You're on the phone with Tom Cruise every day.
We need to bring the money in, Matt.
Oh boy, corporate Ralph.
I'm wearing my suit.
Ralph
I
is
wear my
wearing
suit to the podcast every time we cast.
I'm in cargo shorts and a Dr. Pepper shirt, and he is in a very nice 3-piece tux.
God damn.
I always feel a little awkward when
Matt
Ralph...
hides my briefcase. He can't allow me to have that kind of power in the room.
No, it throws off the dynamic of the show.
I am always randomly opening and closing it.
Yeah.
Just to make him feel uncomfortable.
And it works because there's like $100,000 in there.
Well, you think there's $100,000 in there. Have you ever seen what's in there?
No, you close it every time I try to take a look.
I'm
so
saying.
I assume
That's why it's a power move, because yep.
Ralph knows the art of the deal.
So, Zach, thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
We'll see you all soon.
Yeah. I've got the outro and the thank yous and all that shit. Do you want to run through that?
I forgot about all of that.
Yeah, dog.
Garbage.
I got you. Here, let me sift through this trash for you.
Please.
Ralph, what are your final thoughts on the film?
Oh, I love it. I have as a dum-dum in every respect with anime and kaiju, I'm like, I don't have any
you kind of don't have a dog
expert
in this race.
critiques on a film this good. It is just good. I love it. So, what do you think?
I love it. It's kind of like we were saying earlier. I think of it as a capital F film, but it's surprisingly enough, it's like accessible to randos, and I think
it is.
I think your enjoyment of it is a testament to that.
It's a lot of raw emotion.
Yeah.
That anybody could kind of just tap into.
Yeah. Yep. It's easy to key into, and I think top to bottom it's like this very tight kind of perfect movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, as much as I love it, I don't want this to be the new normal for Godzilla, if that makes any sense. I like this as a one-off standalone movie. I wouldn't want the franchise going forward to continue like this. Does that make sense?
We had King of the Monsters and all.
Yeah.
So
right, exactly. So like we've already seen the franchise go in different directions, and I think this will be the most powerful if it stays a standalone thing. So when the rights are going to revert back to Toho after Godzilla vs. Kong, and when they do, I think they would be wise to let this stand on its own.
Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, they can do another movie sort of they can do another serious Godzilla movie, but for it to be another Anno movie, it might be a little.
Well, Anno's next project is Shin Ultraman.
But I mean, to go back to Godzilla again, that's really a good standalone piece, but
Yeah. I love it as its own.
And hopefully there's not another Fukushima for him to write a movie about.
Oh my God, right?
Yeah.
Jesus.
So
pretty pleased. But yeah, if you're interested in it at all, if you're curious about it at all, I mean, if you're listening to this, you've probably seen it, but if you haven't, check it out.
Yes.
It's a great fucking movie.
Totally agree. 100% recommended.
Yeah.
Of all the movies we've watched, this is the one I think most people should definitely see.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
It's a rock solid movie. So yeah. Ralph, did we squeeze all the juice?
I think we juiced this boy.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
And this is a thick kind of raspberry syrup, right?
Yeah,
when it comes to Shin Godzilla juice.
There is a lot here to comb through. So was there anything else?
No.
All right.
Yeah. Just thanks again to Zach for joining us. Ralph, thank you for our theme song, Harkzilla.
Thanks
also
to the Patreon people, thank you.
Well, I'm getting to them. I gotta thank everybody.
I just thought I would say it this time.
Okay.
Thought I'd chime in.
Do it.
Thank you to the Patreon people.
You heard it. Thank you. Oh, be sure to visit monstersconquertheworld.com for more monster mashing, kaiju crushing chaos. You can follow us on Twitter at MonstersConquer. We have a Facebook group, facebook.com/monstersconquertheworld. MonstersConquertheworld.com also has the open invite to our Discord, so you can jump in there and yak with us about shit. Ralph, what's up with Hellscape?
Same stuff as usual, man.
Just killer music.
Just
pumping out them
wall
tunes.
bangers.
Hell yeah. Check out Hellscape Records. It's dope as hell. And if you like what you hear and want to be our own personal Gandalf or Dumbledore, go to www.patreon.com/monstersconquer and become a patron. All patrons get access to a top secret patrons only Discord lounge, Discord After Dark. At the $5 level, you get access to our mysterious and forbidden shadow episodes. And if you jump on the $25 level, you can pick the topic of an episode.
Yeah, and the next one is going to be Ricchio's episode.
Colossal.
Yes.
So yeah, jump on that wagon, homies.
Yep.
If you can't, though, that's cool, too. There's a bunch of stuff you can do to help us out. You can subscribe, you can rate, you can share us on social media, you can tell your friends, or you can leave a massive scrambled molecular diagram in your abandoned yacht that, when folded up just right, spells out Ralph's complete DNA sequence.
Oh, my goodness.
Let us now descend into the shadows. Signed a corner.
Signed a chord.